Hi, this is Steve Neff at Neffmusic.com, and I have a new free introductory lesson for you. This is on my mastering the dominant bebop scale. And if you have this might benefit you, and if you don't have it, you might want to get it. And it's also on book two, Mastering the Dominant Bebop Scale, book two. And I'm working on a book three. Um, Okay, so mastering the dominant bebop scale. If you don't know what the dominant bebop scale is, it's basically a dominant scale or Mixolydian scale. Um, I'm not going to go into the details of what that means, but on a G7 chord, you got the Mixolydian scale would be G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Okay, so the bebop scale, you add a half step note in between the F and the G. So it's G, A, B, C, D, E, F, F sharp, G. Okay? And it sounds like this. Okay? And sorry. The cool thing about the scale, and the reason it sounds really good, is because when you play the notes in a row, you can switch directions and wherever you want in the scale. And when you play it as eighth notes or 16th notes even to a jazz groove, all the downbeats are chord tones. So it has the effect of a downbeat being consonant and the upbeat being not so consonant, maybe dissonant at times, but then the next downbeat comes and it's consonant. So it has this effect that you can play fast, but it always feels nailed into the dominant harmony below it. So I have a play along here, and basically I did this with Band in the Box. It's going for the soprano sax, B flat instruments. It's going from D minor 7 to G7, back and forth. And I'll demonstrate the bebop scale for you so you can hear what it sounds like, and it sounds really good. Oh, and the reason I have D minor 7 in the play along, I'm going to be playing the G dominant bebop scale, but that bebop scale not only works on G7 and sounds great, but it also works really well on D minor 7. Um, and part of the theory of this is in jazz you have a very common progression is a 2-5 progression, a 2 minor 7 chord to a 5-7 dominant chord. It's very common to see those two together. You have a D minor 7 to a G7. Um, so the dominant bebop scale works great over both of those, and that's why I put both of those chords in here so you could hear how they sound, how the scale sounds great together. So I'm just going to play the scale. Okay, so that's the scale. And what I was doing there, I have lessons on this, but um, basically I started with eighth notes, playing the scale up and down, then switching directions randomly. And then you heard me go into triplets, thinking of the notes as instead of 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2, I was thinking of 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3. And then I was doing 16th notes and demonstrating that, going even faster. And then you can do groups of sixes too, which is sextuplets, I guess, or something like that, which is even faster. But that's how I like to practice these. Once you get the eighth notes down, you kind of speed it up. Okay. So book one is filled with a lot of exercises where you're just playing the scale and getting used to the scale and switching direction. I wrote out a whole bunch of um, things to play through, but ideally you want to get off the page. The point of the first few pages is you just get used to the scale. You get used to the downbeats being chord tones, the upbeats being non-chord tones, and get used to switching directions wherever you want. And once you can do that, and you don't make any mistakes, and you're solid on that, then you start adding what I call links, which is in book one. Now, a link is sort of like a word. You know, when you're learning the English language or whatever language, you learn words as a kid, and then the more words you know, the better you can communicate, the more you can speak. So I think of these little links, bebop links I call them, as basically words from the bebop language. So you add one and it changes what you're playing from a scale to a little bit more of a language. You add two, it's a little bit more of the language. You add 3, 4, 5, then it no longer sounds like a scale because you're adding these links and it's more interesting and kind of going in different directions, different intervals, all that. So here's the example of how to do the link. So link number one is, which is D, C, A sharp, B. And that's in the book, and that's for G7. So it starts on a D, so the easiest way to start putting this into your playing is you play the scale, and whenever you get to a D, you put that link in, okay? So now I'm going to put on the play along. Whenever I get to a D, I'm going to try to put that link in. Okay, did you hear it? It's just a little bit of a more angular, different sound than just the scale. Okay, so now I'm going to add link number two, which is, and you can get the book to figure out what these are. I'm not going to explain them all in this lesson because they're in the book. But if I add those two together, I'm just going to, that starts on a D2. Okay, so that was adding link 1 and 2. Now link 3 is another one that you add, which is starting on an F. F-A-C-E-D. Now every time I get to an F, I'm going to add that one in. Okay? Okay, so the great thing about these is every time you add a link, it's like another word. Okay, and your sentences are getting longer, they're getting more interesting, your bebop sentences, and they sound, like I said, more complex, more interesting. Okay, and so I think there's 33 or 35 of those links in here. And then the next section is bebop, or I'm sorry, resolution links. Now, a resolution link is a link you add or a word you add to take you to a new chord, which is down a fifth. Because many times a dominant chord will resolve down a fifth, like a G7 will resolve to C, either C minor or C major, or C7. But that motion of a chord going down a fifth, very common. It's all over jazz and it's all over music. It's very common. So a resolution link will get you from G7 to, let's say, C7 if you want to. So now I'll look at the camera when I play the resolution link. Okay, when I looked at the camera, that's when I played the resolution link, and then the next, it was only like 3 notes. The next section I was in C7. Okay, and there's a whole bunch of those resolution links in there. Now, a little tip is in the book. When I wrote the book, I wrote these links as 8 notes, the resolution links. And it works, but what I found was that because it was 8 notes long, that my students that were memorizing those, it was very predictable what they were going to play, because whenever they added the resolution, it was always the same 8 notes, and they memorized different ones, but whatever one they chose was very much the same, and it kind of took the improv out of it. And so what I realized with working through the book is you don't need to do the whole 8 notes, but you can just do the last 3 notes. Okay, so this isn't in the book. This is something I'm kind of sharing with you here. So, so for example, like on, you see right there, this is resolution link 1 right there. D, F, A, C, B, A flat, G, F, E. Well, instead of playing that whole 8-note thing, you just focus on A flat, G, F, E. Okay? So the cool thing about that is no matter what that third beat note is that you land on with the bebop scale, or even with the links, it's a chord tone, and then you play A flat, G, F, E, and you get to C7. So, for example, I'm just going to play a simple, like the scale. Okay, I just went G up to D, the scale, and then I added the resolution link, and it took me to C. If I start on B, okay, that took me to C7. If I start on D, that took me to C7. You see what I'm doing? Now if I start on F and go up the bebop scale, I'm just going up 5 notes and back down. That took me to C7. So what I'm saying here is maybe, when you get to that section of the book, just try to pick the last 3 notes of every 8-note resolution link. Some of them are the same, but some of them are different, and see how trying to fit those last 3 notes in will get you to the next key. And I have other lessons on that too. So now